You know what the most disappointing aspect of Joker 2 is? It's not the musical elements, it's not freaking Lady Gaga, it's not even the fact that the sequel spits in the face of the original. No, the worst part about Joker 2 is that it's actually a pretty damn good movie. It may be a complete letdown of a sequel, but as a work of film, this thing is honestly kind of impressive. It was shot entirely with IMAX cameras, and the cinematography is stunning. The score is just as hauntingly beautiful as the first movie's music was, and the acting is, unsurprisingly, pretty spectacular. Folie Adieu is honestly a well made movie, and as a standalone film, I actually don't really mind the overly bleak and depressing story. But in the context of it being a follow up to the first movie, which was an absolute triumph, it really is extremely disappointing and comes off feeling like a punishing endurance test for audiences who love the first movie so much. Because, like I just mentioned, it really does kind of slap the first movie square in the face. It's just painful to watch, man. You know, this movie kind of hurt me more than other bad sequels have in the past because I was really giving this one the benefit of the doubt. You know, I think it's a universal sentiment, regardless of what you thought of the movie, you know, that 2019's Joker never needed a sequel. So when Folie Adieu was announced, I did kind of roll my eyes at how obvious of a cash grab this move was. You know, but then it was revealed that the movie was going to be a musical and that Lady Gaga was going to play Harley Quinn, and I actually kind of sat up in my seat a little bit, you know? I actually kind of grabbed my interest. It made me interested because it seemed like this was going to be a venture into new territory for the genre, you know, just like the first movie was. And my curiosity was certainly piqued, given that the title of the film literally translates to
Madness for Two.
I found myself looking forward to the idea of this shared fantastical delusion between the two leads that would unfold alongside the fallout of Arthur's actions from the first film. Everyone was immediately dismissive of this movie as soon as the musical elements were announced. You know, I think I must have been the only one defending it. You know, I was saying, no, this thing is going to be unique, it's going to be stylish, it's going to bring something new to the table, and, you know, it's going to justify its existence. Well, joke's on me, right? Look, I'm not going to pretend that there weren't some weirdos out there who took the themes and messages of 2019's Joker and misconstrued them entirely. But for the rest of us normal people, we enjoyed that film while also maintaining an obvious awareness that we're not, you know, actually supposed to condone Arthur's actions. I rewatched the movie last night, you know, just to make sure it's as great as I remember it being, and yup, it is. Sure, it's a pastiche of its influences and does feel like the love child of Scorsese's Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, but it's hard to be bothered by that when the film is so stylish and well made. You know, the music, the cinematography and color palette, the acting, it all comes together remarkably, and it's truly gripping to witness such a plausible and chilling origin story play out on screen. I called it a triumph earlier at the start of this video, and that's exactly what it is, not just as a movie, but for the character of Arthur himself. The entire narrative heats up and simmers to this boiling point, and once Arthur becomes the Joker by the third act, he's the most free he's ever been. He's won. Yes, obviously nothing he does in the film is commendable, but as a work of fiction, it's a rousing success of a narrative. Some folks would have you believe otherwise, but you can, in fact, enjoy a sick, twisted story without actually condoning the character's actions. So, why then did the sequel feel such a need to play damage control and essentially undo everything its predecessor accomplished story wise? You know, I've heard some people say that Todd Phillips intentionally made this film bad because he never wanted to make a sequel, and WB was putting pressure on him to make one, you know, surely hoping to recreate the surprise billion-dollar success of the first movie. And obviously, no one except Todd himself can confirm or deny that notion, but I'm not gonna lie, I feel like there might be some truth to that. I say that because the film really does feel like intentionally punishing of both Joker and the fans of that movie. Anytime the plot felt like it was building to something significant, it would change course at the last minute and just nosedive instead. Remember the end of the first movie when Joker stood on the hood of that police car, painted a bloody smile on his face, and started dancing in front of that angry mob? You know, arguably the best scene in that entire movie and the exhilarating culmination of Arthur's journey up until that point. Yeah, there's nothing like that here. There's no victory lap, there's no moment of triumph, there's no rousing success for the character. Now, from here on out, I am going to get into some spoilers, so consider this your warning. Alright, still here? Cool. It's just weird, man. There were several moments in this thing where I thought we were gonna go in some pretty interesting and intense directions, like when Arthur and Harley broke out of prison for that first time, or when Arthur fires his lawyer in the middle of that court hearing, or when he shows up to court dressed as Joker and starts giving his defense, or when that bomb went off in the courtroom. So many moments where they could have went in some really interesting directions. And outside of that dressing up in the courtroom and the imaginary dance numbers, there's no actual Joker in this thing. He never shows up. It's just Arthur. The movie is about sad little Arthur and how pathetic of a guy he is. And, well, yeah, he is pathetic. That was made very apparent in the first movie. But the difference is that that movie had a payoff. This one has no payoff whatsoever. Even the love story with Harley goes nowhere. None of it goes anywhere. The movie ends with Arthur in the exact same place as where he starts, except this time he's bleeding out on the floor. And you know what? I don't even mind the fact that he dies at the end of this thing. But did he have to go out the way that he did? Why couldn't the movie commit to Joker and Harley building a mountain, as she puts it, fucking shit up, leaving some chaos and destruction in their wake, and then have Arthur get shot in the head on the street or something? Because, yeah, he's not a good guy, but the way it happens in the movie is pretty much the equivalent of if Walter White got killed in like the very first episode of season 2 of Breaking Bad, or if the first Joker ended right there when he locked himself in the fridge, right before the next scene where he gets the call from the Murray Franklin show. Just completely anticlimactic. And like I said at the start, I don't really have anything against a bleak and depressing narrative. Just recently, like over the last couple weeks, I watched The Substance and A Different Man. Two new releases, two movies with pretty hopeless stories that are torture for their respective protagonists to endure. If you've seen those movies, you know what I'm talking about. And guess what? I loved them. And I do think the actual story of Folie à Deux works until you remember that it's a sequel. If this was a standalone movie just called like freaking Arthur or something, I'd have liked it a lot more. The idea of a psychopathic killer forced to confront himself after trying to hide behind an alter ego, falling for a woman who only loves him for said alter ego and ends up tossing him aside just like the rest of society, I think is a pretty effective and interesting plot. But you can't have this character go on the journey that he did in 2019's Joker and then follow it up with this. It just doesn't work. But everything else here does. I really do like the musical aspect, and that actually is one of the only things I felt was a well done, natural progression from that first movie. You could always tell that song and dance was a pretty big part of Arthur's identity, and the sequel took it one step further by fleshing out these full dance number set pieces to paint a reality for Arthur's delusions and fantasies to unfold in. I really dug that. But when the imaginary sequences have more action and more Joker in them than the real life scenes, well, there's a problem. I know this movie went through a myriad of rewrites, with Todd saying they'd redo some scenes and write them on fucking napkins sometimes. So I have to believe that the original script for this film was going to give us some, actual Joker action at some point in the narrative. There's no way the original vision for this film was really just Arthur closed off from the rest of the world, with 90% of the movie taking place in prison or the courtroom, with absolutely zero actual Joker material to be found. I think Todd and Joaquin must have been afraid to give us something more akin to the first movie in this sense, fearing that those, same weirdos who glorified the actions of the first movie would do the same with this one. And that's a shame, honestly, to have to account for that kind of reaction. The first movie did nothing wrong. It told a realistic story, but some people just took it too literally. If Todd Phillips really was afraid that the same thing would happen with the sequel, well then he just shouldn't have ever made it in the first place. But I guess the Warner Brothers moneybags were too much of a temptation to resist. It's a really sad situation all around. The more I think about this film, the more I find myself wishing it was some independent, standalone movie. Because in that case, like I said, I would have liked it a lot more. The story is a competent one, and it does have some important things to say, especially in regards to society's glorification and perception of mentally ill criminals. There are some deep themes and great moments to be found here that extend on themes that were introduced in the original. But once you remember that all this is following up the story of 2019's Joker, well, that's when it all starts to fall apart. This is an extremely frustrating movie to watch because Its status as a genuinely well-made and artistically creative film is matched equally by how disappointing and unsatisfying of a sequel it is. We, the audience, we know the truth. We know that the Joker is just Arthur with face paint. We know he's not actually some glorified social justice warrior, a symbol of hope for the mentally ill and deranged. We know it's all just a facade. So why did we need to be beaten over the head with that affirmation every step of the way with this sequel? Was it so wrong for us to want another violent and twisted story, this time on a grander scale with a love interest by Arthur's side? Why couldn't the movie trust us to enjoy something like that without glorifying it? And look, I know the answer is because of the vocal minority that ruined the appeal of the first film for the masses. But in my opinion, those kinds of people shouldn't even be entertained. Just ignore them, just like Gotham ignored Arthur. But nope, this movie had to go and address that crowd directly, and in doing so, ruined the fun for the rest of us. I don't want to say that I will never revisit Folie à Deux, but if and when I do, I'm just going to have to pretend that it's a standalone original piece of work that has absolutely nothing to do with, that one Joker movie from 2019. But anyway, that's all I've got for this one for you guys. Thank you all for watching, as always, and see you next time. Peace out.